Since the origin of man, there has been controversy over religion and ultimately the purpose of human life on this earth. Because there are countless religions and interpretations of why we are here, people have lots of different answers to that one important question: who created us? Christianity has broken into many sectors throughout the years, each adhering to their own moral codes and interpreting the Bible in different ways. Like any piece of the literature, the Bible is indeed up to interpretation. However, it's hard to interpret a story when it was never told in the first place. According to the Ethnography Museum of Ankara in Turkey, a new version of the Bible believed to be between 1,500 and 2,000 years old has resurfaced, and it's caused upheaval to the Christian faith. This is because this Bible includes the Gospel of Barnabas. The story reveals that Jesus Christ was never nailed to the cross and that he was also not the Son of God. This story insists that Jesus was only a prophet and that his fate was not crucifixion, but that he instead made it to heaven. However, the story of crucifixion is not completely lost. In this story, Judas Iscariot was believed to be nailed to the cross instead. This book came to light during a heist when a group of thieves attempted to smuggle highly valuable goods across the Mediterranean Sea. This version of the Bible is believed to be worth over $25 million due to its shocking revelations and antiquity. It's no secret that the world of Christianity and the world of Islam have been at odds for years. However, this contention is largely based on how we as people should interpret Jesus' place in the Bible and thus honor him thereafter. Because this new biblical story reveals that Jesus quite possibly knew the Prophet Muhammad and foresaw his arrival, it can be said that if Christians do decide to honor this new gospel, then their teachings and belief systems might align differently. However, it's common practice of any church, but especially the Christian church, to pick and choose which stories they want to include in modern practice. It takes a keen scholarly eye to authenticate the true intent of Jesus' word at the conception of the Bible, but it takes only several elders of the church to manipulate the transcriptions to align with modern belief systems. While the Vatican remains highly interested in this new finding, it cannot be said whether the entirety of Christianity will change because of it. We do know one thing though. If this gospel stayed hidden from us for more than 2,000 years, then it's reasonable to wonder what else is out there. Bestseller book and Hollywood hit movie, The Da Vinci Code, written by Dan Brown, sparked theories and controversy surrounding the Vatican. The intense fame of this work focused the attention of theorists towards the Vatican, placing the mysteries of the archives into the public spotlight of pop culture. Despite Brown's insistence that 99% of the contents are factual, the claims are heavily refuted by the Catholic Church. Brown's work claimed that Jesus Christ had married Mary Magdalene and had children with her, creating a traceable bloodline with potential descendants alive today. The Da Vinci Code is not the first book of its kind, although it has seen notable fame and success. Since the Da Vinci Code made such claims surrounding Jesus and the Church, conjecture grew, and popular theories now suggest that the true bloodline of Jesus Christ is concealed within the Vatican Apostolic Archives. One piece of supposed evidence for the theory that Jesus had a wife and children, and subsequent descendants alive today, is that there is little known about Christ between his birth and early childhood, and then the years before his death, in his early 30s. The focus of Christ's life within the Bible is largely on his birth and work leading to his crucifixion, hence the Christmas and Easter celebrations. But what was Jesus doing in the other 20 years of his life? This is the question many have begun asking. For many, marrying, having children, creating a family is a probable assumption. It's certainly the one made by Dan Brown. The Bible states Mary of Magdala was a follower and traveled with Jesus. However, Brown and other theorists believe their relationship to one another was more intimate and suggest that the two married. So, what do we believe could be within the Vatican Apostolic Archives? Documentation of Jesus' bloodline potentially being held within the Vatican is a relatively common theory, though the form of this documentation is also in debate. Some believe messages and letters between St. Paul and Emperor Nero contain first-person accounts surrounding Jesus Christ's life, including a written record of his bloodline. Others believe individuals who had seen Jesus personally had drawn portraits of Jesus, and these are contained within the Vatican Apostolic Archives. The earliest, publicly known portraits of Jesus were created approximately 200 years after his death. Why does the Catholic Church need to protect the knowledge surrounding the bloodline of Jesus Christ, if it is indeed contained within the Vatican Apostolic Archives? The answer here is likely rather simple. Evidence of Jesus' bloodline has the potential to contradict the teachings of the Church and therefore undermine Holy Scripture. The implications of Jesus having descendants is a complicated thought. If the relatives of Christ, and therefore the relatives of God, were alive and accessible, then the role of the Pope would be far less significant. However, realistically, after tracing a bloodline for hundreds of generations, the vast majority of people would be related. Tracing a bloodline back for only 20 generations could find up to 1 million relatives, and with the ever-increasing population, locating the closest descendant would be an ever-challenging task. If the Vatican Apostolic Archives holds documentation of Jesus' bloodline, how updated is it? And with such a vast number of descendants, do you think the bloodline could be traced through to modern society? Do you think revealing this knowledge would conflict with the teachings of the Bible, the Church, and Holy Scripture? Christians have long held any sacred remnants from the time period when Jesus walked the earth. Ancient Catholics stormed the world in search of anything that they could bring back to Europe, from holy relics mentioned in the Bible to bone fragments of a saint, so that they might have a physical memorial for reverence in their sanctuaries. Although there is a long history of falsifying artifacts for the sake of profit or prominence, one of the most hotly contested of these is the Shroud of Turin, also known as the Holy Shroud. This piece of linen, found in the 14th century, bears a negative image of a man that some believe to be Jesus Christ, and claim that the cloth is his burial shroud. The cloth was denounced in 1389 as a fake, a claim that faced heated opposition, and the modern-day Catholic Church has neither denounced nor endorsed the shroud. Recently, new details have emerged. The Shroud of Turin's authenticity has been heavily debated since its first appearance in 1390, while also holding firm the position as one of the most well-known relics of the Catholic Church. Finally, in 1988, a team of scientists were given permission to cut small samples of the cloth and sent it to 3 different laboratories, all of whom independently dated the cloth to 1260 to 1390 AD. However, even these seemingly definitive results were contested, as critics claimed that the test swatches were from relatively more recent areas where the shroud had been patched, contaminated by a fire in the 16th century, or delivered inaccurate results due to the number of people who have handled the cloth over the centuries. There is vast amounts of evidence for both sides. Firstly, the shroud depicts the full body image of a man lying with his hands crossed over himself as though for burial, with markings on his wrists. In the Middle Ages, Jesus Christ was always depicted with crucifixion marks over his palms, although in biblical days, they would in fact have driven the stakes through the wrists. Additionally, experts remain mystified as to what could have created such an accurate negative image of a man on the cloth. Tests analyzing the cloth have found no evidence of pigments, paints, dyes, or stains on the fiber, while also confirming that at some point in its past, the cloth had been in direct contact with a body. However, some experts believe that the Middle Ages date of the shroud points to its use as a burial shroud for a crucifixion victim of the day, centuries after Jesus was crucified. Adding to speculation, in 2018, a bloodstain pattern analysis was performed on the shroud and concluded that the faint blood flow stains came from different angles and were not produced by one body as it was being laid out for burial. Believers in the shroud have also pointed out that the Middle Ages radiocarbon date could have been based on years of the shroud being on public display for believers to touch, kiss, and pray over after its reveal in the 14th century. As well as possible carbon monoxide contamination, both instances which could conceivably cause a first-century artifact to be inaccurately dated as Middle Ages. No paints or substances. No matter which side of the authenticity argument you find yourself on, an enduring mystery of the shroud is the source of the image of a man. If it were painted on as part of the supposed forgery of the Middle Ages, chemists would be able to analyze and identify the chemical profiles of the pigments used, as well as identify microscopic signs of brushstrokes, both of which are conspicuously lacking. In fact, there is no evidence of any form of paint, dye, or any other substance being used to darken the fibers. It's as if the individual fibers simply changed color of their own accord, presumably from chemical reactions as a result of laying upon the body as the burial shroud of Jesus Christ. Laying on a human form in this manner could result in the chemical darkening of the cellulose fibers of the cloth with the application of even very mild heat, although other burial shrouds don't usually bear negative images of the person they encapsulated. Additionally, there is the presence of bloodstains and badly decomposed DNA that points to the fact that this was likely used for some type of body. Another hypothesis for the source of the image stems from the fact that the image imprinted on the cloth is a negative, that is, the dark and bright parts of the image are reversed, which is a technique in photography. Some argue that if the cloth were indeed a medieval forgery, the image could have conceivably been imprinted on the cloth using primitive photography materials that would have been accessible, such as silver nitrate and a quartz lens. Researchers have been able to create replications of the shroud using these simple techniques, although they haven't been successful in making the image remain on the cloth when the silver is removed. However, most theorists acknowledge that this is a stretch of the imagination, as there is no documentation of any sort of knowledge of this type, and the odds of no mention of such a groundbreaking technology being made in any surviving record is slim. The fact that the image is likely not man-made, but possibly rather the result of a chemical happenstance, refutes the theory that the Shroud of Turin was a clever forgery of the Middle Ages, and the radiocarbon dating rules out the authenticity of it being a 1st century burial shroud. Theory moderates combine these two compelling pieces of evidence and suggest that perhaps the linen was the shroud of a crucified man in the Middle Ages, something that was not unheard of for the time. Whether or not the Shroud of Turin is ever proven to be authentic or merely a forgery, it's nonetheless an incredibly powerful artifact that contributes greatly to the faith of millions of people all over the world. Even from the perspective of non-believers, the shroud is a powerful archaeological piece dating back to the Middle Ages with a shockingly accurate depiction of a crucified human. Although how this image appeared on the cloth will likely remain a hotly debated mystery, the significance of the Shroud of Turin cannot be contested, no matter which side you fall on. As of right now, there's still many questions that remain unanswered when talking about religion. The Vatican Apostolic Archives, also known as the Vatican Secret Archives, is one of the oldest and most important archives in the world, containing historical documents dating back to the 8th century. The archives contain a vast collection of documents related to the Catholic Church, including letters, papal bulls, diplomatic correspondence, and other important historical records. In recent years, the Vatican has made efforts to increase access to the archives, and many documents have been digitized and made available online. Nonetheless, due to the sheer volume of documents in the archives, many of its contents remain largely unexplored and mysterious. So, what do you make of these interesting topics? Be sure to leave your questions and answers in the comment section below and help us to grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.